Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Quince Orchard Sports Network podcast. I'm Sammy Krimstein, joined by my co-host, Luca DeLasta, and today we have a very special guest, the head coach of QO Girls Soccer, Peg Keiller. How is it going, Coach? How are you doing? How's your summer been? I know the season's kind of starting up, so just how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It was a pretty relaxing summer by design. And so I was really excited to get back to the team this year. Plenty of time to get ready for it. And so far, so good. We've, had 2 days. It started a little wet today, but ended up beautiful. So it's great being back out there.
And so kind of adding on to what Sammy just said, how exciting is this time of year with all the anticipation over the summer and now tryouts happening? You get to get a sense of what the team is going to look like for this upcoming season.
It is definitely my favorite time of year. It's every year as we get closer to tryouts, I get really excited thinking about the potential and what may happen. But it's also, you don't really know exactly how everyone's going to come back and ready and what youngsters are going to show that they're, ready to contribute. So it's definitely one of my favorite times of the year.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for everybody, players, coaches, fans, people at the school. And now we're going to kind of go back a little bit. And I want to ask you about your background in soccer. So kind of what was your first inspiration to start playing? Like when you were really young, when you were little, was it like a parent, a family member that got you to start playing? How'd you first kind of fall in love with the sport?
Well, you're going way, way back. Because I started playing probably about 5, and we had just moved actually from this area to Washington State. And I guess it was kind of a big sport there. And it was just one of those things to get some of us into. I have 5 brothers and sisters, so my parents always wanted to keep us busy. And my older brother and I just got signed up for soccer. I think it was something that, my dad being, old school New England guy was always brought up on, basketball, baseball, hockey. But this was something different. So we decided to try it and definitely stuck with both of us and our younger siblings.
And I know you played college soccer at, I was reading on your website, Holy Cross in Massachusetts. So tell me about some of your experiences with playing in college, some fun memories. How was it for you?
It's definitely one of the best periods, that I've had. It was very enjoyable. In fact, their current coach just wrote to some of us alumni to write letters to the current players. And that was kind of fun to look back because, again, it's been a while. But I loved it. It was, I ended up growing up mostly in Indiana, and it wasn't a very developed sport there. So I went in, to college, not necessarily having the background that a lot of the players did. But, definitely had a lot of potential and that kicked in and just had a blast. And, I tell my girls now that two of my best friends, were on that team and are still my best friends to this day. I see them almost every summer. Like we still communicate. It didn't actually get together this summer, but did last summer. It's just, it was a great time. I think the balance, because, Holy Cross is in the Patriot League, which are very academic based schools. And that's, why a lot of us went there for the academics. So being able to pursue the academic goals that we had, but also play, soccer at the D1 level in such a competitive area was a lot of fun. And like I said, lifelong friends from that experience.
Interesting. I mean, that's something that's echoed by many coaches, especially at the high school level. But what were some of your favorite memories from playing in college?
Definitely the road trips with my friends. I have probably as many memories as the bus trips and the, sitting in the hotels than I do as on the field. Also, some of the commiseration with, coach running you to death in the rain and, bonding experiences like that. But the road trips definitely, and just, the friendships that we made, those were, and definitely some of the games. This was in the early days of the Patriot League, and we did pretty well. One of the years made it to the Patriot League playoffs, and playing games. Some of these, like playing at Army, is great. You're playing right there on the river, and their stadium right on the river, and just a lot of the campuses are beautiful. But so yeah, those are probably the best experiences.
And so did you have any favorite, when you were growing up, do you have any like favorite teams and players? I know with soccer, unlike some of the other major sports, there are lots of different leagues that you can follow. So did you kind of have any inspirational players or teams when you were growing up?
Well, now there are a lot of leagues to follow, but back then there weren't. Not at all. There was,
Okay.
The early men's pro league before the MLS. So if we're going way back, the Chicago Sting, because I grew up not far from Chicago, the Chicago Sting was my favorite team back then. And really no women's teams back then. In fact, after college, I played for the Maryland Pride, which is in the USLW league. And that was before the pro leagues even started. And there was a women's pro league way back when, but it was really small. So, not really a whole lot to watch. And finding a soccer game on TV when I was growing up, we're kind of dating me here. I appreciate that. It was hard to find any kind of soccer game on TV, whether it be domestic or international or what.
Wow.
And now it's like my husband and I talk about that all the time, how spoiled we are that we can pretty much find a game on TV at any time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be looking at, I see soccer games all over the place on
Yeah,
TV.
it's
So it's
changed.
really definitely changed.
It's completely changed in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. It's good to get that, expanded access. And
Yeah.
when you left college, when was it that you kind of realized that you wanted to become a coach and that was something that you wanted to pursue? And how did you kind of end up at Quince Orchard?
So I'd always had somewhat of an interest in coaching. I did a little bit, as a teenager in high school with little kids. And I just, when I was finishing college, I just didn't want it to be over. I love the game and love being involved in it. And I actually was a college assistant coach for 3 years after college. First at St. Joseph's College in Indiana, which is a D2 school. And then when I went into grad school, I was a graduate assistant at Western Michigan University. So it was just something like once I finished playing, I just didn't want to be done. So, found a way to keep it going, first on the college level. And then when I got out of grad school and, was starting to work in Montgomery County, I knew I wanted to keep coaching. And, high school seemed the most logical thing. And the funny thing was at the time, obviously a long time ago, I was trying to figure out what level I should go for. And I'm like, well, maybe I should start at the JV level, or some of the private schools have freshman teams. And I was offered, a freshman coaching job, and talking to some friends of mine. I was like, and they're like, wait, you played in college? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no, you should go for a varsity for sure. I'm like, are you sure? So it's just kind of, I was like, okay, I'll see what happens. And that's what happened.
And sticking on the coaching side now, you said you were an assistant coach and now you're the head coach and you've been the head coach at Quince Orchard. What were some of the most surprising things you learned about being a coach during your first few years of coaching?
That's a really good question. I think becoming the head coach, and again, it was going from, an assistant on the college level to head coach in high school. So a little bit different, but for me, it was getting players motivated every day. Because I think when you get to the college level, you've got a certain level of internal motivation that got you there, really. And I think my first couple of years, that was the hardest thing. Was some of the players just didn't have some of that internal motivation. And how do you, or maybe they had some, but it needed to be cultivated. So how do you cultivate that motivation so that they are pushing themselves, not just being yelled at by you. So that was probably one of the biggest things. And then, at that point, I wasn't even that much older than the players. So, kind of discipline, that wasn't as much of an issue, but that was, probably another thing, but definitely that motivation piece, because I was just used to working with people who, kind of came in with a certain level.
And how did you go about pushing motivation into kids? I mean, as you said, a lot of it's self-inflicted, but there's a certain level that I feel like a coach can put into a player.
You're right. I think it definitely took a couple of years to get the team the whole team to the point where we wanted to be as a team in terms of that. And I think because you build a culture, and you may not have a ton of effect on a single player, but if you can have a little effect on this player and a little effect on the next 5 as well, that all kind of builds, upon itself. And then every player coming into the program knows how they need to act to be a part of that team. So it was, kind of a snowball effect. But just really talking to players, and it's like, if you want to be on the field, I know you want, you tell me you want to be in the field, but you need to show it in practice every day and do the work in the off season and things like that.
Yeah, and you've had a very successful coaching tenure at Quince Orchard and lots of wins, 2 state championships. So tell me about those seasons, some of your recollections, some of your memories. 2002 and 2007, right?
Correct. Long, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me
It's been
about
too long.
tell me about some of your memories and some of just some of the most fun things about those seasons.
Well, the 2002 season was really remarkable because that was the year of the DC Sniper. And at that point, I think that was, only maybe 4 years into Montgomery County Public Schools girls soccer playing in the state playoffs, because previous to 1999, the girls had played in the spring. So the rest of the state played in the fall and had the state championship in the fall. So Montgomery County played in the spring. It just had a county championship. They weren't eligible for the state. So this was like maybe the 4th year or so into being eligible for the state tournament. We got 6 games into the season and we were 4-1-1. And we had lost our last game. I think it was a tight game to Whitman, of course, it's always Whitman. Lost a tight game to them. And then it was like the next day, everything shut down for the Sniper. And so we were forced to, we couldn't practice outside. We had to be inside. And that also meant that we had to rotate. We couldn't practice every day because with all the fall sports being stuck inside, we had to share space. So we were probably practicing 3 to 4 days a week, maybe. For about 3 weeks that went on with no, not knowing what was going to happen at all. But it was clear that, we weren't going to go back outside until, they were caught or whatever. So, and this was, like I said, we got half the season in 6 games. We usually play 12. So we missed all the rest of the games and playoffs were starting. And I think at this point, it was just Montgomery County and PG County that were shut inside. So the rest of the state was going on, and the state playoffs, they said they actually pushed the first round of playoffs back for our 2 counties just to give us a little bit more time. But they said, if you can't play by this date, that second round date, then we're going to have to go on without you. And I believe they caught the Snipers, just a couple days before that date. So we were able to get outside for a couple practices and then go straight into playoffs. So that was just, it was weird. And I'm pretty sure we played Whitman that first game out of playoffs too.
Well, always Whitman. It always finds a way.
It's always Whitman.
Wow.
And almost every game in that playoffs was really tight, like, overtime win, last minute goal, penalty kicks, things like that. So it was just, but we were just so happy to be out there. I don't even remember being that nervous like we normally are during playoffs, because we were just happy to be playing.
And how has your coaching style evolved over the 23 years of coaching? Because, it's definitely a long time. So I'm sure you learn a lot of things along the way, and there are adjustments that you have to make.
Definitely.
So how have you kind of evolved over those 23 years?
Well, I think my former players, especially my very early ones, would definitely tell you that I have chilled out a lot. Like I am a lot calmer on the sidelines. I don't yell as much. They're constantly telling me that when they come back to watch a game. They're like, I can't believe it, how quiet you are. But I told them that's because my current players do what they're supposed to, so I don't need to yell. But and some of that is true. The level of the players is just so developed now in this area. Both boys and girls, but definitely with the girls, it's just they're good. They know what they're doing, so it's made my job really easy. A lot of them play pretty high level club soccer. And they bring that, that ability and that knowledge of the game to us. So it makes, we're able to do more things because if we're not working on the basics. So that's been a lot of fun, is just kind of evolving, that to working on some pretty high level stuff and just watching this team be able to knock the ball around. It's just way different than when we first started. And I've done coaching education along the way. I try to do that most years. Learning new things. But I would say that that's the biggest difference, is the girls, their ability is phenomenal. And I give them the credit for that. I don't always dictate everything we're doing. I give them some say in that because they know they know their stuff.
And while your coaching style has evolved based on the players that come in and their evolving skills, what have been some commonalities between your most successful teams?
I would almost say it's kind of the intangible things, like the the motivation, like we were talking about earlier, the work rate, just every day, because when you're training at a certain level, you're going to play games that way. And I think some of our most successful teams are doing that. They're ready to train hard every day, and they're going to go in hard against, when we're playing against our own team, within reason, of course, but just so that we're ready to take on those better teams out there. That and really the skill level has risen to the point where, we're definitely doing some things that I didn't see my teams do in the past. And so we can work on those things in practice, whether it be, a ton of one touch passes in a row, or we're just, ticky tacking the ball around, or, hitting half volleys, or, doing some set plays that require some level of skill and understanding that we didn't necessarily have way back.
And now switching over from your coaching aspect on the positive side, I'm wondering, have you ever had to deal with locker room issues, or like a student not being like engaged and having such success in the classroom?
So again, this is an area where I'm really, really spoiled. My girls typically do very well in the classroom. I don't deal with ineligibility or anything like that. There's been occasional girls where I've had to get on their case about grades, and, just reminding them that, the chances of any of us earning, a full living in soccer is very small. So you need to make sure that you're on top of your grades and figuring out what you want to do, going into college, going into your career, whatever it is. That's where it needs to be. And occasionally, sometimes, hearing from teachers that, some girls need to be reminded about, best behavior in school. But fortunately, I have to deal with that not very much at all.
And through the years, have you kept in touch with a lot of the players that you've coached in the past? Like, do you hear from them a lot? Are you kind of connected with a lot of them still?
Yeah, I do hear from them. In fact, this time of year,
Awesome.
I typically do. If they're in town, they're like, "Hey, you're having tryouts. Can I stop by and say hi?" So I love this time of year. A lot of times it's my graduated seniors who want to, just come by and say bye before they head off to college. But yeah, I do. And obviously at this stage in my career, there's a ton out there. But I've also, played with some of my former players in adult leagues, like in women's, over 30 leagues or whatever. I kind of look at their graduation dates. I'm like, hey, we need a new player on my Tuesday night team. You're 30 now. You want to come play? So that's been a lot of fun, is, just playing with some of my former players, and some of them joking about
That's awesome.
having flashbacks to being yelled at.
Oh man, that's awesome. Just being able to keep those connections through all the years.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about it. And just seeing, what they go on to be and go on to do. I've got some, I've got girls that, have a couple of their own kids now, and some that are coaching, but, flying Black Hawk helicopters for the Army, and, doing their surgical internships in hospitals. And it's fun to see what they go on and do.
And speaking of what they go on to do, what does it feel like to be a step in the process of some of these athletes who go on to play at the collegiate level?
It's definitely a good feeling. I mean, I know that, the high school, I think in terms of their overall skill development, I don't know how much high school adds to it, but all the girls love it. Like they count it amongst their best soccer experiences, I think, because they're playing with their friends and they're playing for their community, and they're playing at night in the stadium, which is a very different feel from club. But most of the recruiting and all that is done at the club level, and the development from when they're little. But I think, it's humbling to me, and very nice to hear them, talk about how much, the high school experience meant to them and influenced them. And I'm always like, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of surprised at how influential some of them have felt it is. It's kind of cool.
It's got to be a really cool feeling. Oh yeah. And what also must be cool is seeing a player come in as a freshman and kind of see them develop and see them become a really good player over their 4 years at QO. So how is it to kind of see your players develop from freshman year to senior year?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, on the girls' side, we do get a couple, typically, in an average year, we get a couple girls who will make varsity as a freshman. I know it's not as common in boys sports, but I think girls are a little more physically developed when they enter high school. So we do see it a little bit more on the girls' side. And, it's fun to watch them. A lot of them come in really good already, but maybe there's little parts of their game that I hope I can help help fix. So, I'll use Carly Sullinger as an example, who's, off playing at Army right now. She came in, lots of skill and things like that, but she also a very tough player and very kind of had an edge to her, which you want. But we talked a lot about kind of curbing that and using that as a positive, and just watching her do that over 4 years and really keep her head in some tough situations that I think might have challenged her as a freshman was really cool to see. And then, what I really like is watching somebody come in, and, play JV for a year or two, not be ready when they come in for the varsity level, but really blossom over those, those couple of years and show that they deserve to be out there, and then making an impact, as an older player. That's a lot of fun too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And during last year's season, I know that you were going through cancer treatment, and I can't even imagine how difficult that may be. And can you talk about your cancer journey and the support that you received from your team and the entire QO community and the difference that was able to make?
It was a huge difference. It was an extremely tough fall. That week in September was made even tougher. We got, I think it was a couple of days before the first game, my husband and I got my diagnosis, and unfortunately his father had a stroke the same day and passed away 6 days later, which was the same day we found out I was stage 4. So that whole week was just kind of a blur and was very overwhelming. And then, from there on, that's when I, started treatment. So, and that was tough. I had chemo every other week throughout the whole fall. And it was a 3-day course. So I would go in on chemo day and get infusions, but I was also taking a pump home for one of them, for 48 more hours. So it was, it was very tiring. But it was having the team and having, the sport to go to was, for me, was a big pick me up. Like it kept me, especially, emotionally, obviously physically I was exhausted, but emotionally it was something for me to look forward to. And the team, the team was great. But I really look forward to getting out there every day to see them, even practices, of course, games, but even just to get out there for practice was something I look forward to every day, and definitely made the fall a lot easier. So that was, the fall. And then in terms of treatment, I did the 6 rounds in the fall, and then I had radiation in January, surgery in February, and then 6 more rounds of chemo this spring. Finished in June, and it looks like everything's clear. I'll be checked, very closely for a long time, but it was a heck of a year.
Yeah, we're so glad to hear that you're doing better. It goes to show just like how amazing that you are and the determination. It's Peg Strong, I saw the hashtag everywhere. They were not lying about that. That is absolutely true. Yeah. So we're so happy to hear that you're doing better.
I want to go back to your point though about the support in the QO community. Like, first of all, my family obviously was very supportive. My boys both played soccer at QO, and it was obviously probably almost as tough on them and my husband as it was on me. But the QO community stepped up big time for us, not just like my parents, from the soccer team, but just taking care of anything we could think of was taken care of. Things we didn't even think of were taken care of. Putting up my Christmas lights, which is something I do every year, is, but meals and house cleaning and just chores like that. It really made it a lot easier for us just to focus on treatment and getting through everything. And I can't thank everybody at QO enough ever. I'll never live long enough to be able to thank everybody enough to for all that support, because it made such a huge difference.
And as Sammy said, I mean, it's great to hear that you were able to overcome that huge obstacle. But it's also great to hear that QO was there to be right at your side and help you right through that. But now I'm kind of curious, what are your expectations going into this season after a somewhat, I don't know how to describe it last season. Like, it was successful, but there was some, obviously it didn't end how you guys wanted to. What are your expectations now?
Our expectation every year is to go back to state. So that is no different this year. We lost some very talented players, but we've got some great talent, coming back, and some young talent ready to step up. So, our focus is on getting to states again. We were hoping for that rematch with Whitman in the state final, and really, probably should have been there. The penalty kicks can always go either way, but we didn't get the goal in that state semifinal game that we needed. So like you said, great season, but definitely we wanted a little bit more. So we'll be fighting for that this year. And I think we've got a team that can go pretty far.
And as tough as it may be, that game against Broadneck, really tight into penalty kicks, and then you don't come out on top. How does a loss like that for your players and for yourself kind of help inspire you guys to, now that we're next season, how does a loss like that kind of propel you forward?
Yeah, it was definitely very devastating because I think the girls wanted, given my situation at the time, they really wanted to win it all, for me or whatever. But, all I could do after that game is thank them because I had a blast last season. And again, it didn't end like how we wanted, but every time we lose like that, I tell the team they can decide what to do with that feeling. And we'll definitely talk about that feeling a lot this year, especially when we get towards playoffs, that we don't want that feeling of that loss again. And, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's, a lot of that we talk about that because we say that even before, that when it comes down to penalties, anybody can come out on top. It's it doesn't really matter how good your team is and how, if you're better than the other team, it's kind of the luck of the draw at that point with penalties. So that's one thing we always try to do is finish the game and finish it in regulation, first of all. And then if not, definitely finish it in overtime. So we'll work very hard to try to make sure that we can take care of business when we have a little bit more control over the outcome.
Yeah, we're all super excited to watch the team this year. And last question, and it's kind of a broad question, and we've kind of gone over some aspects of it, but what is your favorite part of coaching soccer at QO?
Wow.
Tough one, I know. I always like ending on the toughest question.
Yeah. That is tough. I mean, it's the girls and watching them, not just play, but really, grow as, strong, confident young women throughout high school and hopefully sending them off to college, as strong and confident as we can. And then, for me over time, watching them get out of college and, start families or start these great jobs, that to me is the favorite thing. And just because sport is a huge part of our lives, and I hope it remains a huge part of their lives for a long time. But it is just part, and hopefully it's a part that that helps set them up for, a really successful, happy life beyond. So it's kind of why, I got into coaching was I've had some good coaches when I was younger. And all the way along the way. And I just wanted the girls to have that experience of someone who's going to support them. Also, test them, push them to their limits, but definitely be there behind them, supporting them the whole time.
Awesome. Well, Coach, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Again. We loved having you on. We are very excited to watch the QO girls soccer team run it back this year. We are super excited. We know the expectations are high, and we know that they can do it. We see the talent. We're very excited. Luca, thank you for coming on as a co-host today. Loved having you on.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming on, Peg.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me. I feel very honored that I'm the first repeat.
Yes, I'm not sure if I mentioned it on the air yet, but yes, Coach Keiller is the first guest to be on the podcast 2 times. Very special, and no one better for the job than Coach Keiller. So we'd like to thank you once again for joining us, and that will do it. Thank you for listening, and yeah, we'll see you next time. We'll keep updating our social media with our next guests. Thanks for listening to the Quince Orchard Sports Network podcast. We'll see you next time.